Okay. So I'd like to introduce Sam Rutherford. It has been an absolute delight to know Sam for quite a number of years. And to be honest, the more I know about Sam, the more impressed I am with her as an artist and a community collaborator and an activist in some ways. She would describe herself as a digital artist specializing in community art projects. And she has over 20 years experience as a freelance art educator working for places like the National Gallery of Scotland and other communities and groups. She has a passion for using visual arts as a means to help people have their voices heard. And I would say that's the most important thing you could ever know about Sam, is she listens and then she makes whatever you said really important to her. She has worked with young people, she's worked with homeless charities, and she is always looking for different ways to work with these people and to make their voices heard. So I think Sam's going to further kind of tell you about the different hats she puts on. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over.
Oh, thank you, Lou. And I'd just like to take this chance to say a massive thanks for this project. It's been really interesting, a different take on how to look at theory and practice and marry the two. And that's not anything that's ever been part of on my radar even before. I'm a teaching artist. I teach in gallery settings with community groups. So I've not really had any reason to read up about pedagogy, but it's been really fascinating and it's really enriched kind of how I've thought about my practice over this last few weeks, thinking about it. So like Heather, I had to come up with a pedagogy and I wasn't really sure where to start. It felt like a little bit of a minefield, but there's one project that has stuck in my head, and you've maybe got one that sticks in your head as a turning point, as a really positive project that I did a number of years ago, and it was to do with photo voice. Laurie-Anne, you've heard all about photo voice before, and some others may know about this method. If not, I'm going to be talking quite a bit about photo voice tonight. But I thought I'll start in my usual way. I looked up Wikipedia, I looked up photo voice, and lo and behold, it is based on a pedagogy. So I thought, right, here we go. And it's based, well, on lots of things, and we will go into photo voice in greater detail. But the reason I came up with the pedagogy that I chose was because of this strong link with photo voice. And the pedagogy is pedagogy of the oppressed. And having known nothing about pedagogy, I thought, well, I'll dive into this one. And I found it absolutely fascinating. I've really enjoyed reading up about it. Freire is behind it, and so some of you may know this really, really well. So apologies if this is covering ground that you know, but hopefully I've picked out bits, concepts I find interesting and relevant to now, and how that is reflected in my practice and in yours, and what to take from it that works. Because I think theory is often a very purist thing, but there are bits you can grab and take for your own use and use in your own way. And we'll be looking at that too. So I'm going to start by sharing some slides. And the first slide is kind of, you probably won't be able to read many of the words on it, but I want you to see the kind of muddled way that I've called it the muddled slide. And it's kind of the starting point for this project. And Lou gave me really free rein on this project. And it was great because I didn't feel I had to delve into the heavy theory. I actually looked at lots of articles. I looked at some videos that were meant for children. And I discovered loads about Freire that got me really excited from the start. And I've written down here, it's not a linear process. And the reason this looks so muddled is I grabbed the bits that interested me and I kind of tried to bring them all together. And so I will play this and see where it takes us. So the bit that I thought we'd start with was thinking about Freire himself, because when I tend to talk about an artwork in a gallery setting, which is my normal job, I always or usually start by looking at the artist, and I really love to know about the person. I love to know about their story and where they've come from and why they've done what they've done. So I thought there was a lovely little video about Freire and where he came from. So he grew up in Brazil. There was a little bit about Brazilian history, the fact it had been a colony, slavery. It was the last country that slavery ended in 1888. Only 15% of the population were literate in the 19th century. There was still an underground sort of black market slavery that existed. And in the 30s, when Freire was a child, there was the economic depression. So although he came from a very middle-class family, when the depression hit, it affected him. It affected him hugely, and their family had a lack of food, which meant that although he was a really keen student, he was too distracted to focus on learning at school, and he ended up dropping out and stealing and all the rest of it. And I've written in the side here, relevance now, attainment gap. And yeah, we're not going to head down that route just now, but it is something to be mindful of, that, you know, 21st century in Britain, and we've got our food banks and all the rest of it. So the talk tonight is quite political. It is about having a political voice as well as hearing people's personal stories. So this is where Freire's come from, and he was a philosopher and an educator, and he came up with this critical pedagogy, which was around the oppressed and how to get away from the banking method of teaching, where he sees that as an oppressive kind of system where the pupil is the vessel and you're just filling the vessel up with information, and there's a hierarchy there. So there's loads of really interesting kind of concepts from his theory and his thoughts. And the bits that I handpicked to suit myself, were control of your creativity. So that's one thing we'll be looking at. Democratic learning, so that kind of relationship between teacher and pupil, or teacher and student, where there's a questioning and a problematizing and solution finding, rather than just telling facts to somebody. And then this other bit that was interesting to me was the critical reflection and action. So there was a lovely talk that I saw this guy doing, and he was talking about a specific thing where African-American men in prison were asked the question, why is it that there's a huge percentage of African-American men in prison? And they went through all these questions and thoughts around police brutality, lack of education, racism, all the rest of it. But what they came up with was that because of their lack of education, that is one reason, that is an action they could take, and they set up a program of courses leading to an associated degree. So that was a kind of perfect kind of praxis and Freire in action. So going back now to my project, that was a turning point in my kind of facilitating an education role as an artist, because I think what we're going to look at now is very much Freire said that one point of problem posing and problem solving was to start with a visual cue. So as artists, we have a kind of great way into this type of inquiry. So I was very, very fortunate to be asked to do this photo voice project with a group of adults, and it was an alcohol research project. I think it was about 6 years ago now, it was a while ago. And photo voice, I hope you can see all of that. Anyway, it's a form of participatory action research, and it was developed by Caroline Wang and Marianne. Oh gosh, can't even see her surname there. But it's a method that enables people to record and reflect their community strengths and concerns. It promotes discussion about important issues. It reaches and influences policymakers, and it's there to empower individuals and communities. So it sounds amazing, doesn't it? And it's a very, very simple technique. the kind of key thing to this project working were these words. It was a knowledge exchange partnership. And the University of Edinburgh, some nurses approached the galleries that I was working for at the time and still do about this project. And they had this idea to use this type of qualitative research to find out more about people in recovery and how the environment affects them. So it was this kind of big research thing, and I was asked to be involved. And then there was a group from the Recovery Cafe that were asked to come along, and also a homeless charity that work with people who have alcohol-related brain damage. So already I was really quite excited about this project, but I also had no clue how it would go, how it would pan out, and what it might look like. But I have to say that excited me, and it was a really fresh way to start it. And it had come from the university instigating the project, and I knew my role was just to facilitate. It was all about the lived experience of these people that had gone through it, and we wanted to know their story, and that was a great starting point. So we asked the people involved to take cameras. We gave them cameras. It was a well-funded project, I should also say, which was also great because we built up relationships. There was a lot of groundwork done, but we asked people to go out and take photos of their surroundings and how alcohol had impacted, how the environment impacted their recovery. And this was the turning point in the room when everybody looked at the slides or the images that people had taken, and these people with lived experience. We then had, once everyone had taken the photos, we then had this huge discussion which was recorded, and we tried to work out the themes that came from their experiences. And this was the turning point for me, seeing this photograph. This popped up, and everybody in the room that had taken part said, they giggled, they laughed, and they said, oh, 10 to 10. And me and the nurses just didn't have a clue what they were talking about. But this was the point in time when you couldn't go out to the garage to get, or the off license to get your alcohol. And for many people, it was the only time in the day they could relax, because otherwise, I mean, what we've discovered from this project is licensing laws are given out like sweeties. You probably in Edinburgh have to walk, I don't know, it's something ridiculous, like, I don't know how many meters before you can buy a drink. So for the group, it was a point in that project where I thought, this is where it's working. There's people with lived experience who are letting us know their stories, and this is an image that does that. This is probably familiar to anybody in Edinburgh. This is a block of flats called Dunby Dykes. It's on the Royal Mile. And this was another great image that one of the participants took. And he talked about lots, and then we put this text, we refined the text, and this is what he said. So after coming out of recovery treatment, I was sent back to my old flat, and this was difficult because this is where my dealer lived and my old alcoholic neighbour who was a drinking pal lived. It was a horrible place, and I felt hopeless there. So he was somebody who talked a lot about the recovery treatment that he had gained and how expensive that had been, how completely chuffed he was to get that, and then there weren't the things in place to sustain that. So lots of different things were coming through this project, and some of it was just about admitting you had a problem. But we're really inventive and creative with their photographs too. And we also discovered that people really love being creative and just being asked to take pictures themselves. So I'm going to show you a little video, but just quickly going back through these images, things like the supermarket, really difficult for people in early recovery to go into. And we've discovered these stories from these people. And it was a really successful project. We took it to the Parliament. It felt like there was possibilities for change and that people were being listened to. So in terms of going forward, this has been a group that we've kept in touch with, done new art projects with. It's really opened up a whole creative process for them. And I'm just going to show you a very short video with the participants to show the impact. Now, there's no sound at the start, but let me know when the people pop up if you can't hear them.
They gave everybody a camera and we all went out and took photographs of things that related to our recovery. We had an exhibition at Serenity Cafe and we went to the Parliament and took part in discussions. When I was asked with Roxanne if I would go and help, like, get the group together and organise it, and I thought, how would pictures, do you realise the misery I've been through in my life, and how can a picture capture that? But when you go and take lots of pictures and discuss it in the group sense that we did, it's really, really powerful, to the point that when you put a narrative onto all these pictures, and it does tell a whole big story. I felt very comfortable about exposing myself, if you like, in personal photographs. I think for two main reasons. One, because there was a photo, for instance, a railway track, a bridge where I used to go and contemplate suicide regularly. And I put that photo up, but the fact that that seems so far removed from my life now, it's a pleasant memory, it's a pleasant comparison. But also, I think that a lot of the photos are about how beautiful the world is if you just want to take a look at it, and things that you never saw when you were in active addiction. So it's also exploding the myth that recovery is a struggle, I suppose, just by demonstrating how much pleasure you can take in your life. And what every warrior is trying to say as well is recovery is a success story. It's a happy success story, and we enjoy our lives.
So I feel that you should champion these things and champion the successes, because all you hear on the news and in the newspapers is about, the alkies or the junkies or this, that, and the other, and people can recover and people can become, a functioning member of society.
Overwhelming feelings of pride and joy and excitement and stuff. I know myself, I've never been on TV, I've never done this type of thing. And 3 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, it's not something I would have expected myself to want to do or could have done, or given myself credit to think that I could go and facilitate something like this. So seeing it work, being alongside doctors, professors, the people that have been involved in this, artists, and the community. That's another important key, is when the professional services work alongside the lived experience. And we channel it this way. It's what I believe's happened here. We've won awards, and it's been really, really fantastic. And again, that word's special, but it has been that.
Okay, so that was just to give you a sort of insight into the project. So what I would like to do now is to invite you to kind of think about the project. And I'm going to ask you to do a couple of things, but nothing needs to be shared. I'm just going to put that out there now. So don't feel, pressure. You don't need to take part. If you want to, that's fine. If you want to do it after, that's fine. So the nurses, who were absolutely brilliant, I loved working with, I loved having that kind of different roles working together. They did a great thing. They said, right, okay, I want everybody in the group to share their favourite sandwich. And we all sat round and we said what our favourite sandwich was. And, mine might well be cheese and salad cream with crisps, but that's my own confession. But then they said, and you can do this now if you like, if you've got pen and paper there or whatever you've got there, just draw yourself a little postcard. And this is to show that, it's great to have your voice heard. Well, you'll see in a minute, but write your most embarrassing story down. And you're not going to be sharing this, so that's the spoiler. But the idea behind that was, you know, it's very important to be conscious of your group, of yourself, what you want to share. And if you were writing that embarrassing fact on a postcard, who would you address it to? Do you know, who would you be happy to share that information with? And I think that really stuck in my mind, because, you know, it's all very well asking people to have their voices heard, but are you going to want to have it shared on the back of a bus with your face plastered everywhere, or are you happy for it to be somewhere else? So it's being mindful of that. The next slide I've got is me. I had fun making this today. So I think in terms of lived experience as well, I would like you to draw a face, draw your own face, or draw a little football or anything. And then I'd like you just to spend a minute. You don't need to, but I'd like you to draw all your different hats. So you can be inventive with the bobble hat and the whatever hat, or you can just draw a bunch of baseball caps, anything. But on those hats, just write the roles that are important to you as a person. And it can be anything. Maybe it's something you're just really passionate about. I put part-time cyclist there. I mean, I'm such a fraud. And looking at them, I feel a fraud with most of them sometimes. Do you know, I think, yeah, but I am all those things. And I'm other things as well. I love dancing. I'm not a dancer, but that makes me feel good. So whatever makes you feel good, you're passionate about, or a role that is important to you, just spend a minute or two just writing those down and drawing it. Because I think, you know, with Freire and his lived experience, and realizing that if you don't have enough food on the table, it's going to affect your education and your life. I mean, that's, go figure. I mean, it's so obvious, but his lived experience helped him to understand that and want to change things. And I think, you know, we all have our lived experience. I always, well, I don't always, but I sometimes say in the gallery setting, when you're looking at an art of work, we're all bringing our own thing to it. So if I was to say, wake me up before you go by Wham, we've probably all got a different experience or feeling about that. I mean, it takes me right back to P7 disco, and but that's my story with it, and it's about what our stories are with it. So I've rambled on a bit. We've got our hats done, and if you want to continue with that later, that's totally fine. But now I would like you to, if you have a device that you can take a photograph with, that's great. If you don't, no problem. But I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to set a timer actually. And again, you can do this afterwards, or you can not do it at all. It's totally up to you. I'd like you to go and take a minute to photograph something. And this is, I swithered over how to word this, but I'm going with this. Something that matters to you in your practice. So it could be as an artist, it could be anything really, but something that really matters to you is the main thing. And I'm going to just ask you to get up out your seat and go and do that and come back in 1 minute. So, you know, it's going to be quite spontaneous. It's going to be very spontaneous. And yeah, if you don't fancy it or you want to do it another time, that's fine. You always get longer with me because it takes me ages to set up my timer. But that's a minute going now. So you've sneaked an extra 10 seconds or so. Can't see all the boxes. There we go. Right. And the last bit of, because that is your minute up, hang on. Yeah, there we go. The last bit of this bit is, well, when I was looking at Freire and the whole thing about democratic learning, so that equal thing, you know, there was a guy who did this brilliant talk about it, and he was saying, and I'm completely doing the opposite. So, you know, I'm just talking at you, and it's a passive experience for you. So I had hoped to try and bring a bit of participation in for you. So that's the reason for doing the photograph and the hats. And now I would like to set the timer for 2 minutes, and I would like you to do a bit of free-flowing writing, which I've done in various contexts over the last, I don't know, over lockdown, it's come up quite a lot, this idea of just writing without thinking, overthinking. And the thing I'd like to set before you start to write is just what you love about your practice. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes. So don't overthink it. Don't worry about spelling. Nobody needs to see this ever. 3 minutes. Just 30 seconds to go. Sometimes 3 minutes can feel like a lifetime, can't it? Not long. So, Johan, I see you've just come back in. I hope everybody's okay with their internet access. I think that's the 3 minutes now up. And Lou has spoken about how we're wanting to develop this project further and have a zine and all sorts around the research. And what I'd like to invite you to do, and you don't have to, but if you would like to, we'll give you details to send the photograph that you've taken. And if you want to take 2 or 3 sentences from the writing that you've done that you feel sums up your practice, things you love doing, we would really love to see that. Because I think in terms of, well, certainly what I do, I often feel that with my practice, I go and do a workshop and then it's finished and nothing happens with it. There's no sharing of what I've done. There's no capturing of sharing it, sharing it, or building on it. And I think that's something that we can learn from and do. And it's so important to kind of do that and have the opportunity. So that was one thought with that. So yeah, and with your hats, you might just want to look at them and see which hat you would really like to do more with. I've got community activists with a rather jaunty rainbow hat for some reason there, but over the last, I don't know how many years, the Photo Voice project has been a turning point for me. And also going to Eden, I did a community camp down there and that was pretty life-changing. It was amazing. And it just allowed me to feel like any voluntary work was as valid. And sometimes I got a lot more out of that. I've done a project with neighbours on absent friends, and we've encouraged people to paint people who've passed away, and that just felt so kind of out of my comfort zone. But doing it was a great way to talk about people that we loved. And yeah, anyway, that's another story, another session. But alongside Photo Voice, my practice changed a bit. Oh, that's not. And I really thought about when I got angry about something, I started to make work about it. So this image has been made in response to when there was a tragedy. There was a shooting in a school in Florida, and Trump suggested to arm the teachers, and it filled me with rage. And I asked my girls, who were 8 and 9 years old at the time, what they thought about it, and they said, well, you get rid of the guns. I mean, it was a no-brainer. And it really stuck in my mind. I wanted to make something around it, so I made this image, and it's using stuff from the internet. So the teacher's kind of made up, I've changed his features so that he's unidentifiable. It's an American classroom, but it's my girls, and I wanted them in there because they knew, and they knew so much that they had both hands up. And yeah, it's just a turning point in my thought process, because young people's voices are so important. So the model of Photo Voice I've used in various settings, including in a school with a P7 class. So they went out and they took brilliant pictures. Kids are great at taking pictures, and there's a little video about this later. But they came up with the chat, and then they thought about the things that would improve their playground. So it was a very simple area of inquiry, but it was about them, and it was their lived experience, and we were listening to them. So it was their images, their thoughts, and their decisions. I love this one, more outdoor learning, including art and dance, and just that silhouette. Simple things that might not cost very much. And then something that happened, they got an artist in to do their pod. So again, it's that action that happens, you know, and feeling like something has come out of what you have said and what you feel. I think there's just one more slide. Oh no. So a different hat, my parent hat. This is a project that I did with the school, but it was working with a couple of different companies who were brilliant and did community education. So it was about active streets, and we've been trying to improve the kind of active streets. So getting people to scoot to school and getting children to think about what's right and wrong about the area. So yeah, these were just a few images of their work. And I think it's very much in line with the whole problem posing and action and what you visualize as coming out of that. So yeah, I think that's why I put these slides in, that whole link with Freire's pedagogy. So although pedagogy of the oppressed sounds very kind of, don't know, dramatic and kind of about certain areas, I think the critical pedagogy can be brought in all settings and can really work. And just to finish, I've been working with a homeless charity over lockdown. It's been an absolute joy. And I think with the arts as well, we have got a real ability to bring out things from people. And often it's just asking, so with this project, it changed completely in lockdown. I had to phone people up and just say, what would you like? What would get you started being creative? And in this case, we just sent out postcards and asked, how's everyone doing? And I just wanted to show this one before I show a short film to finish. I think not assuming stuff. We got this incredible artwork and poem back. I'm a man in a bottle, carried over deep tides of past pain and memories, but now I feel rocked towards a sunlit shore, just another gondolier of these times. And we got this stunning work on a postcard back. And I think just to link in with how important art is, which is kind of slightly off your pedagogy of the oppressed, just allowing people to have the materials and trusting them to be, you know, creative is so important. I'm going to stop sharing this and then, I'm going to show one more short thing and then we can have a chat and I'll stop talking. So let me see if I can, I'll do the Zoom face of faffing just for a moment. Right, it's all in hand. So just to finish up, and I know some of you have seen this film, but throughout lockdown, I was working with some schools and we did some work around protest. And then it kind of shifted a bit because I think we all kind of have an idea around protest and maybe it's good to try and harvest what children and young people feel is important and allow them to have that visual voice. So it kind of shifted, and this short film has been made for the galleries to show to schools, but I think with lots of different contexts, it could be shown to different age groups, but it is aimed at 5 to 18-year-olds. But I think it's relevant to lots of people, hopefully, and it's showing some really simple techniques to help people create their visual voice. So I'm just going to show it, and if I can find the share bit, hang on. And then we'll have a few minutes at the end to have a chat, because it's only short. Right, hang on. Okay, let me know if you can't hear it. Might help if I play it. There we go.
My name's Sam and I'm an artist. I've made this short film to share some different techniques to help you get started in finding your voice in a visual way. Sometimes words aren't enough to say what matters, so I find that making art can help to show what's really important to us. There's a movement of individuals and communities confidently expressing their opinions through art. This is really powerful. When I make art, I love to use Photoshop, and I often make work in response to feeling frustrated and angry at the news. Whether that's hearing about women's rights or Trump's suggestion to arm teachers after a mass shooting at a school. I created this image after talking to my daughters who were 8 and 9 years old at the time of the shootings in America. It reinforced for me how powerful and important pupil voice is. So here are some accessible ways to get started using really simple materials. collage. Images and text in newspapers and magazines can be used to great effect. Enjoy taking time to rip, cut, layer, and stick images and words. This can be fun, personal, or political. Photo voice. Photo voice is a combination of taking photos of your surroundings, then talking through the themes generated from the images with your group. Finally, finding text that expresses your thoughts and strengthens your message. These images are from working with a P7 class to find out what improvements they'd like to see in their playground. Photography is a powerful and creative tool. Children and young people tend to be really natural at taking great pictures. But before you get started, it's worth thinking about some simple ways to frame your shot and get maximum impact from your images. The last technique we're going to look at uses relevant objects to reinforce your point of view. Here's an example of a dress that I painted and printed on as a banner for processions, a mass participatory artwork celebrating 100 years of votes for women. The dress being a simple and related object as a starting point. Marcus Rashford's campaign to end childhood poverty was reinforced when members of the public drew and wrote on paper plates to let their MPs know how strongly they felt about the issue. A collective voice using a simple related object to get a message across that would be noticed in a different way to a petition. In response to the pandemic, I worked with school children using disposable face masks as an alternative canvas. Personal and collective messages were enhanced by using the masks and building on stories, themes, and ideas by playing around with the different ways a mask can be interpreted, with lots of possibilities to use these objects as part of a performance or perhaps an installation. Whether you feel the need to express yourself about something you feel strongly about personally or in a group, try some of these techniques and see where they take you. Let your voices be seen and heard. Here are some of my favourite artists that have inspired me from the National Galleries of Scotland collections and exhibitions.
Okay, I think that's it. Oh,